Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a podcast where four friends hang out with each other and share music with each other and share their thoughts. I'm Petey Rave, your man with no plan. Here with me, of course, is my team, my squad, my quorum. We've got Brett.
It's a me.
Yes. We've got Drew.
Oh, that's racist.
And we've got Patrick.
Hello?
Ahwa, ahoo, yahoo. I can't even do it right.
Mama! Mama!
What the fuck is going on?
I don't know.
No.
It's light. No, we're here. Yes, we have things better things to do. We're talking about music, talk about some things, talk about an album, as we do almost every week here and there. And the provider of that album is me. I'm bringing forth an album that I was going in blind on, even though I'd heard of. And I was just curious. I just thought, let's just do it. Something very mainstream. A young rapper by the name of Kendrick Lamar is a young rapper out of Compton, California. I think you guys may have heard of him. Won a Grammy, I believe. He's quite popular. And his album, Damn, all caps with a period at the end. Important distinction. Let's talk about some expectations. I'm definitely curious about this part. Definitely. Brett, I'll go to you first. Who I turn to for all my hip hop talk. Brett,
we'll get into that some more here in a bit. No, I hadn't actually. Take a guess. Me and Mr. Duckworth hadn't really crossed paths, but I knew he was from the West Coast, but I had no idea what I was getting into.
Yes. Patrick, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
I was aware that Kendrick Lamar existed and was very, very well regarded in the greater hip hop community, but I had never listened to any of his stuff because I am precisely old enough and boring enough not to really be listening to too much new hip hop outside of what hits me from this podcast. So it was nice to listen to something new to me.
Yeah. Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
My expectations were, oh hey, I'm gonna be the one that's heard this album before.
Yes.
Cool. When I go into rap music that is not of the quote nerd variety like the last album we listened to, and isn't from that camp, I usually want something that is a little bit more conscious about like the world going on. Like one of the ones I always fall back on when I listen to rap is like KRS-One and stuff like that.
I believe the word
that
is
sort of
woke.
Yeah, woke. I don't know. Sure. I don't even. Although the ones I listen to that are quote woke, I don't even know if they would use the term woke because. Notice we're using the term woke in quotation marks because
that is a loaded term. Yes.
Yeah.
Becomes a little weird nowadays.
Yes.
But yes, if it was 1997, Kendrick Lamar would be totally woke.
Yes.
But
yeah. We're neither here nor there. Yeah, Kendrick Lamar is an interesting rapper to say the least. He's very, popular. He's very popular, very well regarded, critically acclaimed. Like this album is critically acclaimed. But yeah, musically, it is very modern. In its style, very modern hip hop. It's very it's aggressive. It's intense, but it also is thoughtful. Musically and like lyrically speaking, there are quite a few just classic hip hop braggadocious moments, but there's quite a few just deeply personal, intense, emotional moments. The beats are really cool and really fun and varied. And musically speaking, yeah, I think like there's definitely like here and there. There's definitely stuff where you can feel the West Coast of it. Like there's definitely parts where you can definitely feel the kind of classic West Coast influences here and there, like in the underpinnings. There were moments where I thought of Bone Thugs and Harmony. Obviously, Bone Thugs and Harmony not technically West Coast, but of not
I was gonna
technically.
say you're a little far, bro.
But
don't take away one of the good things Cleveland has.
I know Cleveland group, but
they don't have anything else. That's it.
Stylistically, well, I was gonna say, but stylistically, being ones that were brought up and almost raised by Eazy-E as children, they very much have a thing that I was thinking of that is West Coast sounding. They brought that over to Cleveland, but it was still that sound, and I don't know. I really enjoyed that about them. Brett, I'll let you get yours out of the way. How would you describe this album musically?
Well, I mean, first off, don't come to me for quality. This is your first record breakers moment. Don't come to Brett Hibbert for quality criticism of hip hop. I don't know enough about the subject to be able to speak on it in greater words than what I come up with. You know, as Space Ghost said, I'm a 6-piece chicken McNobody. But this is obviously a very successful album and critically acclaimed. You know, listening to the stories of a guy who grew up in Compton and Section 8 housing on welfare, with family ties to the Bloods, doesn't really line up with my history of my dad being a Bassmasters tournament attendee, but I can get behind the storytelling of this album and giving a little slice of life. You know, as the production, it's very heavy bass with the beat and the lyrics being about 90% of the package, but they're like these little pieces of magic that come in. I like to call them the sproing. And there are some sproing, there is sproing. I don't know how you pluralize sproings,
yeah.
But there are little pieces of magic. A lot of it has to do with like the way that they process their samples, and when we break down into different songs, and I'll key into some of that. But this is definitely a storyteller's album, although there is still some, you know, braggadociousness, as Petey said, which is a kind of way to say that. But you know, it does kind of have a bit of variety to it, and I was kind of shocked at how wide a swath of styles that I heard.
Yeah. Patrick, how would you describe this album musically?
So this is kind of so I'm coming in not knowing what this is, but knowing enough about hip hop to get myself in trouble. That's probably the way I would describe it. There is definitely, the roots of this are very much early 90s West Coast gangster rap. Like, this is NWA, like a lot of those ideas and aggression are present here, but also like this isn't afraid to get real personal, real feelingsy, real emotional and vulnerable. It's maybe a tad heavy-handed on the religion for my taste, but I get it. It's him telling stories from his personal perspective. But the core to all of this is, you know, a lot of telling stories over beats, and that is, you know, I think we've talked about it a million times, like kind of a core tenet of hip hop. So like this is if you grew up on gangster rap but weren't afraid to talk about your feelings, and that, like, the production is a lot of traditional hip hop stuff, a lot of super sample heavy and a drum machine, but it works and it's well done. The rapping is he has 5 or 6 different voices that all come out during this album. Sometimes it's more of a singing thing, sometimes it's super aggressive percussive stuff, and sometimes it's mixing somewhere in between those. And it's interesting in you know, the range that one guy has. And you know, this isn't an album with a whole bunch of extra people on it. This is an album that is primarily Kendrick Lamar doing, you know, most everything, you know, with a producer handling the musical side.
Yeah. Kendrick Lamar doing Kendrick Lamar things.
Which again I wasn't familiar with, but now I'm
Lamar things with my friends.
Yeah.
Buy a Toyota Corolla for your sister. I don't know.
Drew.
That dude's the realist. He got some shit for that. That's funny to me.
Drew, what were you? How would you describe the sound musically?
Like Patrick said, it's a lot of Kendrick Lamar doing what I think he does really well. I can't believe neither of you mentioned the fact that fucking Bono's on it at one point. Which, if you want to talk about, like, hey, this album has musical variety for a, like, hip-hop album, one of the features is U2. That should give you an idea of, like, the fact that this thing goes places. I was reading, like, while, like, thumbing through and reading through, like, research for this album, I saw an interview that he did that he said that this album was less of him looking at the problems and he wanted to look more at the solutions, which is why, as Patrick said, he brings forth a bit of religion or a lot of religion into it. And that's where you get that. Yeah, there is braggadociousness in a lot of what he's saying, but the thing to me that comes really cool with that is it is coming from the fact that he's not bragging as much about, like, hey, I've got all these, like, cool fancy things, but more like, yeah, I can buy nice stuff now, but, like, I'm also, like, better than that and smarter than to put all of my self-worth into a Bentley and some chains. And that's, to me, what this album is, from a lyrical standpoint, is there is a lot of smart social commentary in it, and there is a lot of smart politics in it, and there is a bit of, like, singing about, like, hey, you know what's cool? Banging.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of cool. And there's something to that, and there's going to be a lot of that, but there's also, like, you know what else is cool? Not being fucking stupid. Which I think is really, I like hearing somebody, like, in any genre of music say, hey, being smart's all right. And that intelligence, I think, from someone like Kendrick Lamar also goes into the music side of things. It's a really well-constructed record from the music standpoint. All the beats that he's using, all the producers that are on there, which, if you look on the Wikipedia page, there's lots of cooks in this kitchen. Yeah. But it all comes together really seamlessly. It all comes together really well. And there are tracks, and when we break it down, we'll get into that for sure, but, like, there are tracks where the beats are very smartly constructed over what is being said and, like, what is going on there and what he wants to get out. And I think it's really, really well done. A lot of times you get in the genre, like, you get the beat and you get the flow through the beat, and that's how the rapper works. More and more, though, you're seeing these rappers who will construct the beat and the lyrics almost one and the same, so it's more percussive than even ever before, which that sort of thing I think is really smart. And dude's winning Grammys, like, obviously, like, he's doing something right.
Yeah. Yeah, this is just a lot to really like about, like, the feel and the production work, and how it comes together, and that transitions into the tracks, the key tracks. And we can talk about, I think, I'll just start off with one of the more interesting tracks to talk about, especially production wise. DNA. I got got tracks. DNA. God damn, it's so catchy too. Just put that on your fucking car. Just like, but on top of that, so production, it's a cool song. It's clever. It's really fun. But it does a really cool thing. Where for this like the latter half of it, the latter like verse, production wise, like the first verse. So if you read it on the Wikipedia, first verse he's recorded with on the beat. Like he recorded with the beat already prepared, and then he just started rapping a second verse just a cappella, and then he told the producer just put a beat on the verse. Just make it sound like chaos. Just make it sound crazy. And then it almost seems like him and the beat are fighting at that point, which is what's awesome about that. Like, it's cool because it creates a kind of a dissonance, but that works really well for that. Then it kind of comes into the completely different feel with Ya. Just completely different vibe and feel with the beat and the vocals and the hook. Just a nice change of pace. And you have other songs like Feel, like Loyalty with get yourself a little bit of Rihanna in there, which is really nice.
The one, get the girl that sings the hooks. It's fun.
Yes, get the girl that sings all the hooks. And makes you money. But also sings some really cool stuff on there. I'll let you guys hit on some of the tracks that you prefer. Brett, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, I'll sort of do some of the echoing that I don't get to do because Petey doesn't talk about all the songs first all the time. But DNA, the production on that song shines. The somewhat heavy-handed bass has a whole lot of really, really cool things going on, like reversed and speed-shifted samples and some pretty good stereo effects that I thought were, used to good effect. Loyalty has more reversed audio and has like Vocaloid going on or some sort of weird like pitch. I also did not know whether or not, like, I couldn't tell in my lessons whether there was like a tape rewind warble, like that noise going on, but whatever it was pretty cool. But it was also not just on vocals but on the instrumentation. And Humble, any song that opens up with fuzzed out and staccato pianos is going to win me over. But it's probably the catchiest hook as I listened through this album. And also of note, when I've listened to it right before we hopped on to record, I searched it out by name on Spotify, and then Humble Mumble by Outkast started playing afterward, which made me smile and giggle. And that was a good time too. But you can go into all sorts of tracks on here that obviously there are amazing songs that we didn't touch just yet, but those three were probably the widest swath that I could give if you wanted to get a little taste from here and there on your plate.
Patrick, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
So I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey of my experience with this record. It took me a minute for this to click. I never disliked it. It's all very well crafted and very well done, and you understand immediately why Kendrick Lamar is a guy who can put out an album and be number one. Like, that's still a thing that happens. It's different, and it's different in how you do it now than 15 or 20 years ago, but like, it still means you move in a lot of stuff. But it took me a while, and then the song Fear came on, which is pretty close to the end, and for whatever reason, that goddamn song is like the story told in that song, the way it was made, the way it was one of those things that's so deeply personal. It's talking about the concept of fear and how you view it at different points in your life, how that changes as you grow up. But like, it's so kind of different and clever, I guess. Like the idea of it's really clever, but it's also like really deeply personal, and it caught me. And once I heard that, I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna go back through with this knowledge of where this can go and try to hear more. Pride, which is sort of a nice track in the middle of the record. It is lyrically, I kind of like. So we talk about like a lot of hip hop, especially hip hop before like this modern era, is all about braggadocio and over the top, ridiculous confidence. And this is kind of a song about how that's a little fucked up, even though it's not directly talking about hip hop. But pride as as a coming from his religious beliefs as a sin, and also as like just a really harmful thing that is true about many people, and talking about just the problematicness of pride, and I just thought it was kind of a cool song. And then the last track on this album is a fucking killer, Duckworth. This was one where I'm like, I'm pulling this shit up on Rap Genius, finding out all this shit. This is some true story about how some dude in the neighborhood who was a bit of a person who did not necessarily follow laws. I'm gonna call him that. Maybe almost could have robbed and killed his father at work, but then didn't because his father was like real nice to him, and then doesn't talk about it so much, but later on signs this Kendrick Lamar Duckworth kid to his first record. That's kind of a cool story, but like the storytelling and the way it was done was really good. And then one of the things I noticed throughout the record that's true is Kendrick Lamar has like this mastery of the rhythm of rapping and being able to change it up and do different things, even in a single verse. Instead of doing the exact same cadence line to line, he can change it up in a verse and have it make sense. It's like knowing where to put stuff in, but also where to leave stuff out. And like the kind of usefulness of stopping for half a measure and then coming back and hitting it. And it's a thing that is not straightforward in rap music. Rap music is very often like I want to say it's like high school poetry where like when you're learning how to do stupid, terrible poetry in high school, and they're all about like things like syllable counts and having like a rhythm to it and the way it goes. He fucks with that in really, really nice ways. And in Duckworth, there's a couple of parts where it's really incredible, and like listening to it kind of from a percussive side. I'm like, I'm a shitty drummer, but like I do really love like percussion as an idea as part of music. You get this really interesting thing that isn't like a pure speed thing. It isn't like I'm gonna put a million syllables here, which is impressive in a different way. It's like I'm going to make this polyrhythm with my voice versus the beat, and I'm not going to do the same thing twice necessarily. And it's really cool. And like, to me, that track, I don't know why he buried it at the end, because it's so goddamn good.
Yeah. Kind of made it like as a like in the Wikipedia, it says it quotes the Daily Campus. It says that it ends the album with a fantastic philosophical mic drop. It rewards you for listening to the end. Yeah. It is your reward for actually listening to an album as a whole. Mm-hmm. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, for me, DNA like leads off. There's the spoken word bit at the beginning, which is good, but DNA sort of leads off, and the beat on that hits in such an awesome way. The way that Kendrick uses the beat that was already pre-made, prefab, like he was rapping over the beat like normal quote, right? So like the way he hits enunciations on that bass beat, I think was really well done. You can hear emphasis in the voice when he does it, and like it emphasizes certain words. And I think it was constructed perfectly to do that. Then the Geraldo sample hits.
Yes.
And then the next part happens. And knowing now, like having heard it before and thought it was cool but kind of weird, and then like doing the research into, oh wait, this was an a cappella thing, and like he told the producer, Mike Williams, to go back and make the new beat to fight him on this song, I think was really cool. Humble is one of my favorite rap songs in recent memory, period. To put on as like a pump up song. The song is, again, just one of those things where like there's some great like turn of phrase in here, but you also have like the whole line, the whole grouping of lines, the Photoshop lines in that song are great. And it's sort of that chunk there, in my opinion, is a slice of what Kendrick Lamar is about. Like, just, if you go into his back catalog, like, he's been saying that type of shit for years. And has been, like, speaking out and thrown down about, like, people not being true to, like, themselves, which is why I like punk rock music in the first place. It's why I like the rap that gets into more political things in the first place, because at the end of the day, it's like, look at what you're doing. Like, why do you care so much? Like, stop. Like, which I think is really cool. And then gonna talk Triple X. Like, let's get into that. The beat itself is like uses samples and a way to meld with the words that I think is really smart. It plays really well. The way as the more violent parts of the music hits, and those themes start to begin, you hear the sirens come in and stuff like that. The verse of the loyalty and like the gun violence in like that like mentality juxtaposed with like talking about like the super political, like, what is America doing? Like, why can't we focus on making ourselves better? Why do we focus on violence elsewhere, trying to make others better and doing this violence that's not necessary? And fucking Bono's on it. Like, Bono sings the hook. And like, it's weird and it's out of place, but it's just one of those things where coming from this, and I'm sure you guys, having done this show enough and dabbled in enough genres, it's stuff like this that, like, if you can have U2 on a hip-hop track, like, music is music, like, everyone takes inspiration from everywhere, and that, to me, is just super cool to see something like that. Like Kendrick Lamar, this West Coast Compton rapper, like getting into that stuff and having like U2 like come out and like recognize like, hey, this guy makes some good music. Maybe we should also make music with this guy. Like that, and like that mixing of music, it's like, yeah, no, you should never say this isn't, like, everything in this genre is bad or whatever. Like, there's always going to be something somewhere, and if somebody like Bono can recognize it, why not everybody else?
Yeah. Let's bring it back around the horn. Talk about some conclusions. Brett, what would be your conclusion on this album?
Well, I mean, it won't take me convincing you to go listen to this album because most likely you've already heard it. You know, I personally, I doubt I'm going to dig much deeper into this album for a while, but it's a great album, and I'm way more knowledgeable in things now that I have heard it and can be hashtag joining conversations or whatever. If for nothing other than getting a taste of culture today, listen to this album.
Patrick, what would be your conclusion on this album?
Well, I didn't wouldn't go full on and say I love this album. I loved moments on this album, and that's still something. I'm curious if I'd like his previous record more. This was good enough that I'm curious to listen to other Kendrick Lamar and see how I feel about it. He has definitely got something special going on and something unique and something that makes him different than a lot of other hip hop. And I completely understand now why this guy's selling a bajillion records and why he is as popular as he is.
Drew, what would be your conclusion on this album?
The dude followed up a Grammy-winning studio album with this. There was the small EP in between, but like this was like the first like big studio release after To Pimp a Butterfly. And to me, if you want to know what the good parts of hip hop can be, if you want to know how hip hop can speak truth and can be a storytelling genre, you can look to Brett's favorite story, where eventually chicken tastes like lumber. But
hey, there's no speaking truth to power like speaking truth to your friend's mother.
Yes.
in there, a wise man once said, "Word to your mother."
Correct.
Exactly.
The wisest.
But no, in all honesty, like this stuff is super smart and super well done, and it's just something that even if you hate rap and you hate hip hop, there's something here, and it's something that I think is just really cool. It's an easy softball to suggest, like, even if you hate it, just listen to it for the words and like seeing the world through this guy's eyes, because I think it's a really interesting take on those social politics. And like you said, it's not speaking just the troubles. There's been people who have talked about the problems over and over, and this is something like eventually you're going to have some parts that are like, man, we can do better. Like, all of us in this nation can start solving some problems. Let's do that. And that's cool, man.
Yeah. I think overall, yeah, this is a really cool, like, personal, emotional album that has just that. On top of that, is also just fun to listen to on some parts, quite a few parts. It takes influences from classic styles in hip hop, while also having quite a few things that are pretty modern and connect with people. For one thing, it's a double platinum selling record. So like I said, you probably already heard it. But if you haven't, give it a shot. You know, it's a really well made record. Like sometimes you know, popularity this is a funny thing with music. Sometimes, a lot of times, things are popular because they're the lowest common denominator, and that's fine. They're the least offensive thing, and a lot of people like it. But sometimes something is popular because it is the greatest common factor, or is one of a greater common factor. And I think this is more like that. This is something that is so good that it can hook all types of people in to what it has to say, what it's doing musically, and for a reason. And it's really fantastic. I enjoyed it. I don't know how many times I'll go back to it, because obviously it's like, we'll see. But overall, I think it's a really well made, well done record, worth checking out. Yeah. Let's bring it to the main event of the evening. Let's bring it to our haiku reviews. The moment we've all been waiting for. Correction! No, the haiku reviews.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was just listening to the Beastcast like literally as I pulled into the driveway. Let's give a big kiss on the cheek to let's talk about some haikus. Brett, what is your haiku review?
Petey brung the rap. It's our most modern record. Powerful album.
Patrick, what is your haiku?
Heralded hip hop. The hype is not misplaced, though. Good storytelling.
Drew, what is your haiku?
Grammy follow-up. Hits as hard and just as smart. He does it again.
Yeah. My haiku review. Very, very modern raps with a passion and focus deserving of praise. Yeah. Go check out Kendrick Lamar's Damn if you happen to have not already. It's everywhere. Just I mean, the presence and popularity, I mean, it just can be summed up by the fact that every song has a Wikipedia article.
Yep.
Every track. Yeah, go check it out on our Spotify playlist. Also on our Spotify playlist, presumably, will be next week's record. Actually, we know it's going to be next week's record is going to be on there. It's going to be provided by Patrick. Patrick, what do you got for us next week?
Another new record. This year has had a few new records that I've enjoyed and bring on the show. This one is Gon' Get Weird. Chelsea Wolfe and her new album, Hiss Spun.
Yeah. So look forward to that discussion next week. But that is next week. And this is this week. And we're here and now. And you can, of course, find us all over the internet. Patrick is at The Swagger. Brett is a Habidi Brebbert, HIBBI2IBIBBARD. Drew is at XJuiceForX. I'm at PD Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com. Rebelli.net for this and other shows. Rebelli TV on YouTube and other places. You can send your postcards to...
look up the zip code yourself. We can't handle all of your postcards.
Exactly. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
A little kiss on the cheek.
Mwah!